Welcome to the Symphony of Realities podcast, boldly taking you where no podcast has gone before. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation as you settle into your X, Y, and Z coordinates within time and space. Here are your hosts, Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Anatra. I have with me, as always, Sean Bond, and a special guest we have today, Tony Rodrigues. So welcome to another episode of the Symphony of Realities podcast. So today we're going to take you where no podcast has gone before. We're going to be talking about the secret space program and different elements about that, and having Tony and all of his many experiences regarding that. Some of you may be familiar with Tony, some of you may not. But for everyone, whether you are or not, I'm sure this show is going to be extremely fascinating for all of us. So, Sean, did you want to say something as an introduction before we start asking Tony some questions and having Tony introduce himself?
Sure, yeah, let's do introductions. Yeah, hi, I'm Sean Bond of the Psionic League, Psionic League YouTube and psionicleague.com, and I get very heavy into this subject and have been accumulating evidence and interviews with people that have gone through similar things and ET visitations and bringing out the evidence for the covert military ops and secret space program and the different buzzwords people can look up. That's increasingly harder to find with the censorship barriers, and it's like, oh, why would they do that if it's not like something to worry about? And that, you know, whatever 20 trillion missing money from the defense budget or the black budget that's just gone away. Nobody knows where it went, and then everyone stopped asking about it. Yeah, and I did a show with well, there's two shows on my Psionic League site with Tony, so feel free to go to those two at Psionic League at YouTube if you want to see more of Tony. Awesome. And yeah, can you plug how to reach you?
You're talking to me or to Tony?
Tony. Oh, did you call yourself?
Yeah, I mean, kind of people know how to reach me, but I wanted Tony. Tony, give us an overview of who you are. Spend the next couple of minutes just describing for people that don't know anything about Tony Rodrigues.
Thanks. I'll try my best. You think that after you do a few interviews, you go into the next one thinking that everybody saw your last one, which is preposterous. But so a lot of people have never heard of me, never heard of the material. And, you know, a lot of people that are unfamiliar with the entire genre of the secret space program and the career return program, where people are being taken and put back immediately, taken for a long time and being put back the same night with a blend of time travel involved. Like right there, as soon as I said that, I'm sure I lost some people where they go, what? But as soon as you do that, I mean, you know, anybody that's not familiar with that, to digest the rest of the story is just too much in one bite kind of thing. It's a very hard pill to swallow. But I'm somebody that experienced that and was able to get my memories back. They delete your memories after that, got my memories back. And then I was able to work with researchers. And I've had a lot of bullet point things check out and a lot of overlapping testimony with insiders and, you know, some pretty talented researchers in the field of ufology, and a lot of supporting evidence. And the more things that I research about what I remember, the more things support. I really haven't had anything just shoot it down, and where I researched and said, you know, I remember it was a blue car, and then go back and it was a red car, for, you know, just as a hypothetical thing. It's always checking out. It always goes back and, yep, the car's blue, just how I thought. So this keeps happening over and over. It's happened dozens of times. And so for people that don't know, I was taken. I was involved and brushed elbows with people that had access to the secret space program and some other black programs, basically black budget programs. And as a punishment for being, for ticking them off, I was thrown in the side door of one of these programs, and I was taken as slave labor and put in what's called pop culture calls a 20 and back. And I was taken for 20 years They took me on a Thursday night. I was 10 years old in 1982. They took me out of my house. ETs showed up in my bedroom and took me. It was an abduction. And they had me for 20 years. And I put me back on Earth into programs. And then I was eventually sold into the space program and went to the colonies throughout the solar system for 20 years. And then at the end of it, they put me back in time and regressed me so that I was right back in the same 10-year-old body. Right. And again, I know that anybody who's never heard this before, it's, I'm losing you. But, just keep listening because there's a lot of info. There's a lot more to it than that. I'm just trying to sum it up. And so I was taken on a Thursday night in 1982, and I woke up Friday morning at the next day. And I had the feeling of being gone for 20 years and not the memories. So they deleted my memories, and I was completely a changed person. The next morning, I went to school and got lost. I forgot where the bathroom is. It's not a big school. And, I changed. I had a huge personality change, and I spent the next 20 years wondering what the hell happened. And later on in 2015, so I was, I don't even know my age, 40 something, 43, 44. 2015, I went and got an MRI scan on my head. I had headaches, so the doctor sent me in just to get checked out. And I got an MRI scan, and about 2 weeks after that, all the memories came flooding back. I found out about the secret space program and the 20 and back, and I went, oh my God. I always had a few memories of being taken and kind of bleed through memories of the experience, but that I ignored because they didn't make any sense. And once they started coming, like it was basically an event in May of 15, and I just remembered years of memories came through. It wasn't a moment of inspiration. Some people accuse me of that, like I just thought up a script for a book. It wasn't like that at all. It was years of memory. It was an entire personality that I integrated, and it happened. It was really big chunks of it came for the next 3 months. And then over the next 6 months, I started dealing with researchers because I wanted help. And I'm still remembering little bits and pieces today, but I was able to basically present my case and prove some things. So I have a lot of bullet points that substantiate my case, unlike a lot of other people. And I don't say that they're not genuine or anything. It's just that I had the luxury of spending the first 6 years on Earth and knowing places that I couldn't have known, knowing things that I could not have known. And a lot of people have the same experience, and they've come forward. They don't have that luxury. And so I started doing interviews. I did a first interview. I thought I was going to do one interview, and that was it. And one led to another. And I ended up for years. I mean, every week for the last 6 years, I've been doing interviews. I have a show, a Patreon show, Talks with Tony, because a lot of my interviews started to get scrubbed last year. In 2020, when YouTube had this big purge, a lot of my information went with it for whatever reason. And then the book came out. I worked on the book the whole time. A lot of people begged for the book. And I'm not kidding when I say beg. People were begging for the book. Like, please write a book, please. It's a different audience. Like, some people cannot sit in front of a video for 2 hours and listen to the interview, but they hear people talking about it and they can digest it in written form. So I really didn't realize that until the book came out this year, that I reached an entirely new audience. And then the other thing about the book is, like, I'm struggling, just what I've told you just now. I'm struggling to get details in there so that it's believable, so that somebody that's skeptical listening to this for the first time doesn't get lost, or isn't in a tailspin. And in the book, the book is a luxury that I can tell the whole story in a linear fashion, and somebody reading it can actually keep up and go, oh, that's what happened, and it makes more sense. So the book has been a real gem as far as that goes. And it's done well. And I'm working on the second one. So that's kind of where I'm at now, man.
That's incredible. So the title of your book is Ceres Colony Cavalier.
Yes.
Okay.
And
so I'm going to say a couple of things just so that people can understand, like, the title of the book. Ceres is a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt. It has a cryovolcano called Ahuna Mas, which erupts water, ammonia, and methane. So just giving people some background information is what is Ceres. In January of 2014, emissions of water vapor were detected around Ceres, creating a transient atmosphere known as an exosphere. So I think that's just incredible too. So a lot of people may have heard of Ceres as a dwarf planet. There's also the concept of the bright spots of Ceres as well, and what those could possibly be. So that's what Ceres is. Then the colony, obviously a space colony. And then when you say Cavalier, what do you mean by the word Cavalier? Because I wasn't quite sure how you would define that.
Well, in the book, there's a scene that explains it, but basically I got in trouble. I
Okay.
was charged with cavalier behavior, and I got in trouble. So I was the Ceres Colony Cavalier, and I fell in love. I was a slave. So let's be clear. I was slave labor up there. I was taken. There's a colony inside the planetoid Ceres. We referred to Ahuna Mas as Pyramid Base, and that was actually the crater next to it was the entrance to the hangar for the ships. In one of those little craters in a cold trap. And that's where we would enter. And the radio handle was Pyramid Base for Ahuna Mas. But the Okator crater is one of the things that I'm very proud of in my testimony is that in 2015, the Dawn probe originally went high altitude, and when they scanned the deposits there around in the Okator crater, the white spots, they said that they were the same thing, like a sodium and ammonia and a few other things.
Right.
And I was on record. I said, no, they're salt. That's salt. That's a geyser there. There's a geyser that goes off randomly between every 4 or 6 years. And it's a geyser that goes 10 kilometers into space, and the water evaporates, and the salt that's left over, it's like ocean water, the salt and a little bit of magnesium snow back down. And that's what's left those deposits. And it's 3-4 feet thick, a pile of salt there, because it's been happening for a great deal of time. So I said that in 2015, and NASA said so. I was working with a researcher, Dr. Michael Sala at the time, and he got a hold of me, and he said, this is what NASA's original thought is, that it's a sulfur and ammonia, it's all these other things, there's no salt. And I said, no, it's salt. He asked me, do you want to retract your statement? Because this is in the record, you're on the record. And I said, no, it's salt. Believe me, if there's one thing I remember out of my whole 20 years, it's looking at how beautiful that geyser was, for one, and the conversation that we had as we were flying by it. I was on a ship on the sea deck of my ship that I was stationed on, that I was working on. And we were all talking about all the salt that was left over down there as we flew over it. And I was 2 kilometers away is how close I got to see it, which was very close to this phenomenon. So I said, no, it's salt. And I held to my guns. And then it wasn't until August of 2020 that NASA finished compiling the data from the Dawn probe, and they came out and said it's salt, it's briny salt. And it was August of 2020. So I started getting emails and things, and it was that's a real thing of validation. If you can call out something and then it gets proved by NASA, that's the official, that's like the mainstream media basically stood behind what I called out in the first place. So if that is true, and then I've got a host of other things, and there's actually a great body of evidence that I can't share with the public because, I would endanger myself. So about people and places in Seattle that have checked out as well. And I've worked with people, I've been contacted by branches of the military privately. I've been taken in and interrogated. I'm talking about in my life since I went public. And there's information that is not appropriate to talk about and present, but it is a great deal of evidence, just as powerful as the calling out the salt. There are things I said about a house and society in Seattle, near Seattle, and it all checked out. So that's why I'm not afraid to do these and talk about it publicly, because I know it's hard, and I take my lumps. There's some people that it's very cool to be skeptical, but some people, I take my lumps, man.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I'm sure, with the salt is just going to be one of many proofs that all get put together to show that you're being totally accurate and truthful with everything that you're talking about.
And for the audience that is skeptically minded because of the world that we live in, as to present into lead up to your story, ways to get past their skeptical mind. Is there anything you would say in your discovery that that has shined, oh, that makes sense, to the conclusions with the memory retrieval that you've done? And we'll also go into the stuff that we discovered along the way that would, if you didn't know about all this stuff, it wouldn't make sense. This is out of nowhere. But if you have this ladder, this staircase of like technology that is discoverable and researchable, that has existed but is covered up in mainstream media because it's not convenient to them in their power dynamic and controlling the people, then what would you say to somebody that like the key words to opening doors of wisdom and knowledge in the staircase up to the conclusion that you have? What would you present, and then we'll present ours?
Okay, so that's a big question, Sean. Great to see you again, Sean. I know we've talked for years. So I do have a different perspective, just because I have the memories of what I went through. So I have a different perspective when I see things unfold, especially nowadays. In the last 5 years or so, the media has really lost it's really lost its subterfuge, if you will. Like they had to go so hard at it that it's become obvious to even people that didn't believe in it before. It's like the media is very programming. And so I mean, you can see it coming. So when I got my memories back, I set to task to research it all, research the things that I went through. And I was learning about the programming that I went through early on. I got put through trauma-based mind control. And what I remembered of it was just awful. It was terrible. And I thought, this can't be real. So I went back and researched it, and I began to study what the history of it. And I went, wow, it's exactly as I remembered it, with a few other things. And then we went through a sleep deprivation program, and that was checked out later too, with the same people that I'm on a tangent. As I researched that, I saw that that's how mind control works. It works best if you're unaware that you're being mind controlled. And that's what the media is up to. So it takes you about 2 minutes to get put into a state of hypnosis, and that's how long your commercial breaks are. And you look at that's the music, the commercials have nothing to do with the product. It's all about putting you into a state of bored, like a hypnosis. And then the show comes on, or whatever it is, and they're programming, and you're getting hit with subliminal stuff that you don't even know is there, and it continues from one show to the next.
Yeah, the patent for the TV is like based on alpha brain waves and getting people to a state. It's like used in the wording, so people can look that up.
Oh yeah, right. So it's there. But one of the biggest things I guess I would say to anybody is that if you're aware that you're being hypnotized, if you're aware that you're being subliminally, you're getting subliminal suggestion, if you're aware that you're being it, then it doesn't work. So, and then after that, so I got my memories back, and I researched it, and I started watching the media, and I went, oh, I started to see it, and it's obvious to me now. And a lot of it, so that's what we have right now. We have people on, in the huge online community, you have people that know about the programming, and you have people that are programmed. That's where we're at right now. So I don't want to get us kicked off here, man, because you can't even say stuff that you're supposed to. You can get canceled when we talk about, especially when we start talking about the recent pandemic, so there's buzzwords and things, you can get in trouble. But it's an age-long thing. They've been doing it all along. When you look back on it, they've been giving us subliminal mind control all along. When it first came out in the 70s, Congress made it illegal, and about 8 months later, they quietly passed a bill that made it legal again. So everybody thought it was illegal, so it wouldn't work on them. And they've been running it full steam ever since. And it's like all of it. The more I research it, the more it looks like not only all the media is on the same page, but all of Hollywood. And the whole time, the entire lifespan. So from the 30s on, they've been all on the same page and using mind control techniques.
Yeah, that all makes sense. And I think the people that watch this channel and so forth, they're probably 100% in agreement with everything you're talking about there. I wanted to mention something to you, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but a lot of times I talk about Mandela effects, because that's how we can have a glimpse to show what reality actually is. And I had a Mandela effect with your name. Like, I always remember your name ending in a Z instead of an S. And I know in this timeline, I'm sure it's always been S, right?
Yeah, it's always been S. But it's a lot of people like, so I'm on that poster There's a poster, the Great Awakening map. If you've ever
Okay.
seen that, there's a
I have-
poster. It's been out for a long time, and I've always had a Z on there. So it's just people misspell it, and sometimes a lot of times I think that they misspell it so that they can deny me later if I'm inconvenient. You know what I mean? Like, no, that wasn't him. It was different. But people naturally misspell it with a Z. It's in essence Portuguese. It always has been. I will say this about the Mandela effect, because, well, when I was on Ceres, so for people that don't know, I was on Ceres and I worked on, basically, it was a German breakaway group that had a sponsorship from the Orion group, a group of hundreds of different species that are from the Orion star system, and they have a lot of real estate up there in our solar system as well. They consider it their region of space. So the Germans got into space in the late 30s, early 40s, made an alliance with the Orion group, because that's really essentially what you have to do to get into space, and not get your butt kicked as you travel around. You have to have a sponsor from one of the larger groups, the Federation, Galactic Federation, a light federation, whatever. There's many of them, but they have to stick together so that there's a bit of security. Anyhow, on Ceres, there's a breakaway group, about 250,000 Deutsch culture people that live there, with other ETs and with a slave labor force, which is what I was. We had the ability to travel to other systems immediately and travel time. So what we did regularly was the ship would leave in the morning at 8 a.m. in the morning. The ship would pull out of the dock at the pyramid base, and we would fly away, and it would jump to another system. And when it jumped back, it would jump back 5 minutes away from Ceres as the crow flies, 5 minutes in the past. So we'd leave at 8 a.m. We'd get back at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes away, so that they could see physically the ship there before it left. And that way, if the ship didn't come back, they knew the mission was a fail, that we lost the ship.
Interesting.
So if they didn't see the ship, they would cancel the mission. The ship's not there on time, cancel it. And it would get scrubbed, and we'd have to clean the whole thing. So we were creating paradoxes. They called it anti-telephoning. That was the term that the Ceres Colony Corp called it, anti-telephone missions. They would scrub the mission. They'd ask us, they want to know what our dreams were like. We got debriefed. But those worked completely differently than the Mandela effect. So that did happen. They did scrub our missions. It wasn't too often, but it was frequent, where the mission would get scrubbed because the ship was lost or something went wrong. They were aggressive. They could schedule more aggressive. And it did not work like the Mandela effect. So when the mission was scrubbed, there was once, and I didn't see this myself. There was once that a mission was scrubbed, and it was because the ship did come back, but it was in the wrong place, as if it had been hijacked and somebody else was driving, because only the captain knew the right coordinates to return to. So the ship was so they scrubbed the mission, and they said when they scrubbed the mission, the minute they said cancel, that they canceled it, that other ship immediately disappeared. So the paradox was immediate. It wasn't like it stayed there. It disappeared. So I don't know. People, I don't think that, I say this all the time, say in a lot of interviews, I don't feel that people are built to really talk about time, to think about time travel. I think it's our human brain isn't built that way. We're built to manage time from day to day. And we have short-term and long-term memory, and that's how we have short-term and long-term planning. And we don't think about messing that up because we traveled back in time, a short-term or a long-term, and changed our plans. Like, it really throws most people into a really bad place mentally to start thinking like that. So I think the Mandela effect is something else. So I don't think it's a temporal paradox where somebody changed the timeline. I think it's more of a natural phenomenon, like a split in timeline. Like I think the physics, from what I remember of when they did paradoxes in space, when we were traveling time space, the physics that I remember were not the same as we're seeing with Mandela effect things. So I don't know what the Mandela effect is. I really don't, man. And I don't really, Berenstain Bears, I get it. I remember all that. I don't pay that great of attention to stuff. So I'm not saying that I believe in it. I believe that it's true, but I don't think that it's a paradox. I think that it's a different phenomenon. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. And we kind of don't believe it's a paradox either. So we're kind of along with you in describing. we've kind of tuned into multiple causations, but it's usually like you said, splitting the timeline and then reemergence, and then the observance phenomenon and the memory and the collective all remembering the same thing. So I love what you're getting into with time travel, and yeah, it blows up people's minds. And when I first got into it, it blows my mind. But I'm addicted to blowing my mind, so I got to a place where I'm really good with observing time, and it's one of my favorite things. So to like bridge the people that are skeptical and don't know this stuff into it, and I'd like to also get back to that for like your awakening and the stepping stones for how you would be able to go to the conclusion of secret space program and your experience to allow that to unfold, because most people would block that as soon as they started getting the memory bleed over. For the temporal and Chris could add to this too, and like there's like secret projects with the Nazis and the Nazi Bell, and then them experimenting on anti-gravity tech, and then things that are you know in there fleeing from Germany, and the narrative controlling like what happened to them, and them going to Argentina and Underland and under Antarctica, and like having Admiral Byrd discover and have like an experience where he claims to have seen UFOs that could pick them off with pretty good weapons. And then the Japanese doing stuff with the space, and the Chinese going to space and setting up bases presumably in the black budget, and all these compartmentalized projects that don't want to talk to each other, and steal money from their citizens to support it. And then the PR campaign of the space race to make it seem like we're limited, and then not really funding that to its fullest because of various reasons that they don't want the public to know about, so they can control us more and keep us here. And it's like a chattel. And then going into the time travel, like with chronovision being discovered by scientists that work for the Vatican, being able to tune into potential future timelines, and as well as past time, and then being able to bring that up with the technology replicated from the pineal gland, Project Stargate with remote viewers, and these different psionic shares that amplify vision spectrum to see in the future, and then replicating that in a big massive scale. And then Tesla getting involved and making huge jumps with his Tesla Vortal tunnel technology and teleportation with Project Pegasus and other projects that I go track back to around Colorado Springs, and this big rip in space-time that they're using to fuel the authority of their projects. And like the Philadelphia project of teleporting a whole ship, and then people fusing to the decks, and the movie Prestige going into Tesla's little nod to his involvement in such projects. Looking Glass technology, and then going forward with this with projects that would then lead to Time Corps with the human factions, and then all these other ET factions that are good at time travel and temporal dilation, which is compression of time, or as you say with what people can look up 20 and back program, which I've also seen multiple different spectrums of time based on what they can get out of you, where they'll take you off for a certain, like, let's say this is the regular timeline, and they take you off for somewhere else for a certain amount of time, and they bring you back, and then certain technology that I've seen, a lot of it inherited from like Lyrans and other species that can age regress a person, some chemical, some like holographically at the core of light technology back to the age, to make it as seamless as possible to where you don't even notice, and you get a memory wipe, but there's still data and trauma and emotions and things that go into the experience, and it's all like hidden chess games of like each player on this planet whether it be a positive or a negative, or my lab abduction against your free will and slavery, towards taking people at a like cheap type of resources on the planet and using them as a workforce against their will, or in a collaborative chess move that they're involved in, and part of their alter knows what they're signing up for. It depends on the faction. So that can kind of bridge it. And if any of you can bring up something for the skeptical mind of how you reached your perspective and things for those people to research and keywords.
So that was a lot, Sean. That was, you know what I mean? Like in a nutshell, like somebody that doesn't know would probably be lost, but there is a lot of, so I'm not the only one. Firstly, I would say that. So I have a website, and I've always been on Facebook. People that see interviews of me and they want to talk about it, they go, man, somebody that sees the information for the first time and goes, oh, wow, I think that might have happened to me too. And I've been, I did my first interview, I think in September of 2016, and almost weekly, I've had people ever since contacting me saying, I saw your interview, I was blown away, but when I was a kid, this happened, and this happened to me, and I think it might have happened to me. And I'm getting accounts of ET contact and other things across the board, but I've had well over 2,000 people that said they've experienced the same thing that I did. So it's not a it's not a bad dream. It's not, there are common denominators. And once I sit with them and start asking questions, and I ask the same questions, I start getting the same answers from people that have no idea that the question matters at all. And there are common denominators that keep popping up. And, and we're talking about time travel. My theory is that we're talking about extraterrestrials and humans that are working alongside them, and they have facilities either underground or on the moon or inside the moon, and they're taking people and they interact with them at a child. They groom them for whatever the purpose, and they can take them when they're 5 and put them back, and then go back when they're 10 and take them and put them back, and then go back when they're 20 and when they're 40 and 50, and they can actually experiment on their whole life. And it's the same night for the people that are doing the taken, because they can travel time as well. The other thing that I remember is that there was a limit to time travel that they had. So there were beings that live outside of time space that police it. So because the first thing a skeptic, somebody listening to this right now,
the time cops.
Why didn't they go back and kill Hitler and get rid of World War II? Why don't they go back and do this and that? Why do we even bother? Why do we play the game if we already know what the score is going to be? Why don't we just go back and change the game? Because they can't. Because there are some things that are not changeable. There are intelligences that don't live in time space. They don't, but they have great control over what we do inside the hologram, and they police it. And so there's only so much they can get away with. And they let them do these experiments in certain closed areas. And the Earth is essentially a closed experiment. And these are going on. But and I know the things I know just from working with people that have contacted me. And like I said, it's over and over and over again, the same thing. There was a point where I couldn't do it anymore because it was just too overwhelming. I couldn't keep up with everybody. I started not being able to call people back. I still don't. And I started charging. And people say, well, that's what you are. Ultimately, Tony, you're just trying to sell books and you're a con man and you're trying to make money. Well, I went for a good 5 years of doing interviews 2 or 3 nights a week on top of my job. And then all day Saturday doing consults, doing interviews, and working with people. And I've done it at great expense to myself for free. And it wasn't until I met Jackie Kenner, who's a very brilliant person, who set up the website and said, Tony, start charging, man. This, people, you'll stop missing appointments if people pay. And it started, and I would occasionally get people that were just being trolls. They want to talk to me, and then they were just, acting like kids. So it sorts all that out. And, if information is valuable, then it should cost something in this society. We're not going to give up money yet. And so the book is important. I've only got that book. I lived it with these people. A lot of people read the book, and it's a dark sci-fi tale. It's my childhood to me. So that's why the book is for sale. And, I feel like any penny I get from this, I've more than earned from what I went through, what I suffered. So I would say that, I'm sorry, Chris, I know you got a question coming, but I would say to anybody skeptical, look, there's a ton of info. I'm not the only one. There are a lot of other guys coming forward talking about this. There's a lot of information you can find out, and a lot of the things I say overlap with people that I had no idea. I never heard their story. They never heard mine. Chris O'Connor just came out, and he's never heard my information, and I saw his live presentation in San Jose a couple weeks ago, and he said a lot of things I say almost word for word, because he's been through the same thing roundabout.
It's funny because as you're talking, a lot of the things that you're saying are dovetailing with other things that I've come to understand as well. So it's beautiful how all this information starts to come together for myself, for you, for Sean, for our listeners. And I think on your website, which I think is tonyrodrigues.org.
.com.
Yep. .com.
With an S. Yeah.
With an S, not the Z. That's another timeline possibly, or misspelling. You have like a course for people that want to have these fragmented memories. Just describe what that's about.
So, okay. So in the beginning, the original memory recall. So the big chunks of memory I got back were emotional moments. So I didn't remember the mundane, the day-to-day chores of doing my laundry while I was up there. I didn't remember those. I remembered when I got beat up. I remember when I got paid, when I had a girl for my first kiss. You know, like I remember the big spikes, those are the memories that come combat. Those are the memories that come quickly, the emotional highs and lows. And then over time, I thought, I was doing interviews and people were like, man, so what did you brush your teeth? What was the bathroom like? You know, I got guys and I don't care if you throw me a curveball and ask me tough questions, because I should be, if I'm up here being serious and being honest, I should be able to have an answer. And I was like, man, I don't, what was the bathroom like? What was the routine? I remembered some of it, but not really. And what I did was I started experimenting. I was like, I read that rosemary essential oil helps your memory. So I put it all over my shirt, and, you know, it was like, whatever. I started doing memory exercise. I started meditating. I stopped short of a hypnotic regression. So I've never had that. I've never had a hypnotic regression, and I'm not against them. A lot of people get them, but I feel that you should wait. I feel like you should work on remembering, give your mind some time before you get, because a lot of people are butchering hypnotic regressions these days and kind of front loading the information. So you got to get a good one, a good regressionist, and you should take your time and have a basis of things you want to ask your higher self. But what I did was I figured out, I got into a routine and it worked, and I was able to remember, get memories, glean, you know, more memories. And it was taking a memory that you already have and not knowing, you know, like I remembered waking up in the morning, there was an alarm that went off. It was kind of like a prison. It was a big barracks with a bunch of thousands of guys, and the lights would come on and bang, you know, an alarm would go off. And we all got in line and we had to go to the bathroom, and you had to shower, and then you had your clothes waiting for you. You were in pajamas, and then you went in and there was a hook with your clothes for the day, and you change, get on a train, and some guys would go to the mine, some guys would go to the hangar. And the detail, I remembered waking up, and I remember getting on the train, and the in-between memories weren't so clear. And the same way that you remember a song, like, you know, hey, you know, if I hadn't seen Sean in 5 years, and I go, Sean, remember that time we hung out, man, last time we were at that bar, and remember that song that was playing? What was the name of that song? Dang it. And you at that moment, when everybody does this, everybody's experienced that, to try to remember something. It's actually like a muscle that's flexing. That's when you're reaching for a new memory, your mind is actually searching. It's just, it feels weird. We don't think of, you know, but it's like a muscle. It gets strong. You can get good at it. But you reach for it and you go, man, I don't know. What was this? God, it's on the tip of my tongue. You understand what I'm saying? But then you go, well, whatever, it'll come to me. So what I did was I figured out a way that works, because a few minutes later that day, a half hour later, you go, it was the Beach Boys. Remember that? You know, it comes to you. It comes. So there's a real thing of like flexing the muscle and letting go, and then the subconscious digs it up and gives it. So I took that action, and I've made an exercise, and I found the best time of day for it, and some other things, you know, health. And I
think it just locked up.
Oh, you're frozen. Well, in the meantime, until he gets it fixed, come on. The interference. Yeah, I guess we could like. Oh, he's back.
He's back.
There I am. Yeah. So I was gonna say I'm still going. I didn't have any lag at all.
Okay.
But instead of explaining the whole thing, so the other thing, Jackie Kenner, who helped me with the book and the website and everything, I would have never done half of this without her, has a teachable course where she teaches a lot of other things. She said, why don't you just make a module and put a teachable course? And I've had a lot of positive feedback about that memory course. I feel that the memory course, it's an hour and a half or 2 hours. I forget how long it is. You go on there, it's like $40, and you can watch it, and it gives you the exercises and like a schedule. It gives you like a memory workout to do, and it works. And I'll tell you what, it works. It doesn't have, you don't have to be an alien abductee. It's for long-term memory. It's for remembering things from long ago in your childhood. There's a lot of, you can use it. People use it to unpack trauma. It works. And I feel that it's good for, I feel like it's perfect for somebody that's like got memories of like an abduction experience, for instance. And
Who's that person again? The
Jackie?
method?
Jackie Kenner. She helped me with the book too. She's got a connections with Jackie.com, I think is their website. I think there's a link to her website at the bottom of mine.
Yeah, it's like JACI is her name spelled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But what that does is, I feel like if you want to go, because everybody's automatically like, go get a regression, get a hypnotic regression. Here's my regressions, they're awesome. Go do that. And I feel like that's more like a tattoo. I feel like my memory course is something that you would do for a month or two and then get a regression and have a basis, because you can remember things. If there's something happened to you, but you can't remember it, the exercise that I developed in that will get it. It does work. It does work. It's just, and that's what I did. I because I had to remember what the toilet was like, what the toothbrush. I went, oh my God, they were disposable toothbrushes. They were in plastic. We'd throw them away. Had the very few bristles, and we only had like a 1 minute to brush in front of an old sink, and everybody threw them away. They were disposable. Every morning we had disposable toothbrushes there on Ceres Colony, and we only had like 30 or 40 seconds of, you pulled the chain and the hot water came on, and you only had like 30 seconds to shower and get on, because there was a line of hundreds guys behind. And these were all memories that I didn't care to remember, but I needed them because, like I said, if it happened, I have to be able to answer the tough questions as easily as the easy ones,
Yeah, it's interesting too, because everything you're talking about, those details are really important. And sometimes myself and Sean will do things where we'll tune into like a comet, for example, that's approaching Earth. And is that really a comet? Are there any species in on the comet? And we'll tune into different species that are on there, like a praying mantis species or something like that. And you communicate that with people, and they think that you're like, it sounds like it's crazy talk. But everything that you're saying, like, I believe that like these asteroids, these dwarf planets, these comets, all the species that are around, they're actually there. And you can get yourself to a point where you can tune into actually what's on these different things that are like cloaked, I would say, or shown to us in a 3D dimension.
A lot of things are slightly out of phase, and the solar system is absolutely teeming with life. Pretty much everybody in the solar system has life on it or near it, and places in between planets. There are space stations that they can't see. They're slightly out of phase, and so that we can't see them from the ground here, and they're all over the place. Our solar system is a very busy place.
Yeah.
Forest traction.
It's like incredible when people start to begin to understand this and understand what's going on around them and how much we've been concealed from the truth. And I even think you said that on the Ceres colony, people thought that the Earth was destroyed or something like that. Can you explain that?
So, yeah, and it's like it's an official statement that the Earth is like not habitable, or there's an atmosphere and it's crippled. The Earth is crippled, but it's kind of one of those things that everybody knows. Everybody on Ceres Colony kind of knows, but don't believe it because they're officially told something else. But there were, because we came back, we did missions to Earth. We came here and picked up cargo at Diego Garcia and a few places in South America.
That was one of my questions for you. Have you ever been to Diego Garcia? Okay.
All the time. And what's funny is I remember that was one of the memories that I remembered early on, because we cracked a joke about it every time we went to Diego Garcia. We're waiting on Russian cargo coming off a Chinese boat, So we're going to load onto a German spaceship on an American airbase with an Italian first name and a Spanish second name in the Indian Ocean. That was we kept adding it on and making it longer every time we were flying back there. And that's what we always said when we were going to Diego Garcia. It was neat because it was, there's palm trees and stuff. So we always went in the middle of the night, and there was only one tarmac, and there were 2 officers, 2 Americans that were aware of us. Everybody else, they would lock the base down when we were there, and we would pick up cargo. Sometimes we dropped off cargo, but most of the time we picked up any kind of military surplus cargo that went back to Ceres or anywhere else that we traded. We picked it up there. We picked up vehicles sometimes. Geez, I forgot what I was saying before we got to Diego Garcia. It's good. You were so happy.
I know
Chris, you lit up.
You totally excited me. Yeah, because there's another aspect too of Diego Garcia too, which has to do with a cloning facility and a detention center. And yeah,
underneath.
Yeah, exactly. Underneath. Because when you and anyone that's watching this, if you go to like Google Maps or something and call up an image of what Diego Garcia looks like, it's kind of suspicious that the United States Navy would actually have a base there. Like just so right from the get-go, it's like there's something weird going on here. But then hearing what you say, hearing the things that I tune into, that it was once an abandoned ET base that the government took over, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's very
so underneath of it. Yeah, I don't really know what's going on underneath of Diego Garcia. So we were only topside. There was the one tarmac we stopped and we got our stuff. We picked up cargo there and we got out of there. There were a couple times we waited. We had to wait for the ship that was running late, and we would go over and either go out to sea and they'd let us go swimming, or one time we went to the Turtle Cove. I think it's Turtle Cove. At the bottom of it, we hovered there, and we dropped a cargo net down, and people could go swimming. They let the crew go swimming.
Wow.
But only when we had a big layover. That was another thing that I got in trouble for. So whenever we did swimming, I quit doing that. I would go down to the cargo bay and just hang out with everybody, but I wouldn't go in the water because I got in trouble for that too once.
So the solar system teeming with life. You're running cargo ships. Kind of reminds me of even my line of business, where I have a software company that specializes in food distribution and moving cargo from point A to point B, and all the challenges you have with loading the trucks and operating the warehouses and all the logistics that go with that. So you were directly involved with that on a galactic level, or an solar system level at the very least.
Intergalactic. We would. There were times we left the galaxy and went to other galaxies. We went very far away. That's I don't think I'm the only one saying it anymore, but a lot of people don't say it, and a lot of people coming forward, I guess, just didn't go very far. But the ship jumped instantly across, a fifth or a third of the distance across the galaxy. We could jump immediately, and then it would have to recharge up, and then we'd do it again. So we could get anywhere in the galaxy and back home in the same day. There was another mode of travel that used natural wormholes, or tears in time space, and there's one by Jupiter. That's why there's a bunch by Jupiter, but we would use natural portals, and that's how they would leave the galaxy. We'd go to another galaxy and then jump to a system in there. And so that's how accessible space is. We would do that, and we would come home at the same time, or later that day, sometimes later in the day. But it's a one-day trip. We didn't sleep on the ship. We didn't live in living quarters on the spaceship like in Star Trek. We didn't do that. We were back in base every day. We came back every single day. So that's how close deep space is. And that's something that I think that's a big secret. Like, even in the midst of disclosure, they're going to want to keep that. They're trying to make it look like all of Hollywood and everywhere that you ever talk is like, even if we did get light speed or faster than light travel, it's still super far to the next, you know what I mean? It's still way far to get anywhere. And that's BS, because these programs have complete access to trillions of worlds.
Exactly. I like that you talk about natural portals. Do you know anything about that you can describe for people?
Well, so I don't know exactly the history of it, but it's a natural phenomenon from what I remember. Around Jupiter, there are temporal bubbles, and there were a few portals that are basically tears in time space, big bubbles in space. And if you go into them at the right speed and right angle, you could navigate And that's what it was. And there were temporal bubbles that if you went inside them, you were technically outside of time space, and you could come out at a different time. And they have space stations inside of them so that they can relay information and communicate with themselves in the future. So they can send texts, for instance, to themselves in the past or the future by using these. And other faster, close to the speed of light satellites inside the solar system will slowly time dilate, and over time they'll go farther into the future. And so they can send messages with quantum entanglement communication. They can send messages back and forth. I honestly think that this is an easy tech. It's not super, you don't need to have antigrav to do it. It's something that we could do now, just to need the quantum entanglement communication. And I think that elements of our government have this ability that they can send messages, a week or a couple days or a week or a month back in time or forward in time. I believe the U.S. military has this ability in a limited form. It's not hard to do.
I read that too with the natural places on Earth, that like in Colorado Springs and USA, and Japan is known for a bunch of temporal anomalies and rips in space-time that I read go back to back when the Japanese gods and kamis were like living embodied people, and that sacrificed themselves because there's all these portals and rips in space-time opening up, and invasions happening, and like this temporal war, and they some of them went into this is what I read anyway, that it's like wounds passed down through people's DNA and like inheritance and things to resolve how demons are getting into this reality. It's like some of these priest class beings threw themselves into these holes to try to collapse them, and then they become not nature beings and kami people. They kind of merge with reality, kind of thing. And there's these tunnels that people have videos of where they go through. They have clocks and timers and stuff. They go from one end to the other, and it changes the time, like going, as well as these big portals that open up in the middle of the tunnel, and it's like observable. It's weird. But Chris, you're gonna say something?
I was going to say, just this is like tied into this, kind of random, but I want to get Tony's opinion. I know that there are at least 46 German U-boats that have never been accounted for. Could these things be flying around in space? Like, do you have any opinions about that?
So the first ship I worked on for about 8 years was a converted submarine that was converted into a spaceship. So that's in the book. The thing that I remember, so that was a really mundane job. It was I was suicidal. I wanted to that bad. But the thing I remember about it most, on top of being claustrophobic, was that whenever we were in a hurry, there were 3 guys that were locked into the bottom deck of it that had we had a computer screen that told us what to do. We had numbers for names. And and we would get in the middle of taking stuff apart, and it'd be leaking. So hurry up and go back. I need the clamps. Run and go get them. And you would run back. You'd run and get the clamps and run back. And I'd always hit my shins on the door. You had to step over the threshold of the old doors, with the wheel that shut the door.
Yeah.
The submarine doors. And it was like every day there was towards the end of the time, like the ship really fell apart over time, and eventually got decommissioned. It was malfunctioning. We were constantly cutting it apart, and over time it was like our work day was more and more unmanageable, where we had to run to places, hurry up. We had to hurry, and it was like every single day I was busting my shins on that door threshold. And so that ship was decommissioned, and I was promoted to cargo engineer and put on a modern ship that's like a teardrop shape. And it still had thresholds. It still had pocket doors that would close. They were pocket doors that would close and pressurize, but it was only like 2 inches of a threshold. So I never tripped over it. I was so happy. That was like the biggest improvement in my life back then. That was the best thing that happened to me to that time, was just to get on a ship that did not have those doors everywhere at every section, because they were a nightmare. That really sucked.
What do
You
you
probably
remember?
didn't get to keep those iron shins that you earned through the
Mhm.
regression, right? Yeah. Then
No, not at
the
all.
problem with it.
What do you remember about like the design of some of the ships, like some of the later improved designs, besides what you just mentioned?
Well, the one that I was on, the MVL, the Max von Laue, was about 1,000 feet long, about 600 feet wide, I guess. And when I'm putting it in feet, it was in meters, really. Everything was metric. The front of the ship was plush, had carpet and windows, more windows. The sea deck had carpet and windows. I've got some artist drawings of it, artist renditions. There was the mid deck around the center. The ship was 500 feet tall. The mid deck had a hallway that went all the way around, and that had the food and the bathrooms. Like you had to go to the mid deck, and windows, observation. That was the observation deck, and a wider hallway. The rest of the ship got tight. Like in the front around the bridge area, it would have wide hallways, but then if you walked to the back of the ship, it got narrow, and to where you had to step aside and let people by you. And then it went from having plastic covers like an airplane, like an airplane wall, the walls of an inside of a commercial airplane. It had that kind of wall in the front of it, but in the back it just went to metal, and it turned into like a white epoxy coated metal everywhere, and graded floors were down in the cargo area and in the back. But it was pretty spacious where we worked, and we had water fountains, and there were fast ladders. There were ladders that were fast ladders. It had artificial gravity, and there were distortions in some areas of the ship. There was a fast ladder you could go down and you weighed a little bit less for an area. Just was a consequence of the way it worked. In the front of the ship, there was an elevator, all glass elevator. We had implants that allowed us to translate talking to other people with other languages. So there was a friend of mine that spoke Italian on the ship, and while we were working in the day in the cargo bay, I couldn't understand him. But when we were at the inside the elevator, or at the exit at the door of the ship, at the entrance, it was about Bluetooth range from the door of the ship. Then the implants would work, and we could understand each other. We could talk to each other. That was the tech. But other than that, it was like a big old boat, man. It had things that went wrong with it. We bought. It was my understanding that we bought the chassis from an ET race. Like they bought the shell of the ship with the engines and the generators that powered it, and then they brought it into Ceres Colony and fitted it for humans to work in it. And that's when it got the workstations at the right size, and the briefing room. They had a briefing room, it had a bridge, and the elevator. They built a like a tower on the middle of it, in the front, and it was stealth. It was smooth. It's all smooth edge. So that's what I remember about all the ships, is they were all stealthy. It's not like in the movies where they have all these square edges, that they were all stealthy for radar evasion. That's something that's pretty standard for when they're around other worlds. It works in great distances in space. A black ship with a stealth thing, it's very undetectable and great. It doesn't have to turn invisible. But it was smooth, and it was a machine. So things went wrong on it sometimes. Like I was in charge of the port side cargo bay. So there were two cargo bays next to each other with collapsing walls. So all the walls could drop between the cargo bays, and it would turn into one big bay. But there were basically 5 separate cargo bays with pressurized walls that were folded, that popped up. And I was in charge of the 2 on the port side. And the doors that opened up, the external doors, were hydraulic. It was a hydraulic system. And then one day, one of those broke, and we had a massive leak in our area. And ever after that, it smelled like hydraulic fluid. It was stinky, because they cleaned it up, they fixed it, but they didn't really come in with they didn't send a cleaning crew in there. They just left it, and we worked around it, and it was stinky. So it was like a industrial, working in an industrial, like in a factory kind of thing. And we moved boxes. We had a vortex loader. We had standard cranes that we could unroll, that like booms, and we had a vortex loader that would create a vortex above the boxes and like levitate them into the cargo hold. And then guys, we'd measure the boxes, how much they weighed, length, width, height, put it into a computer. That was my job, to take all that data. And I had a pylon, like a touch screen, and I would type in all those numbers, and then the computer would spit out a printout with a layout of how to stack everything the most optimal.
Okay, I have a question for you for something I just learned today. But you know how like when you go to this is a cargo question. When you go to the supermarket, everything has like a UPC code. So when it gets scanned, it knows what the product is. Just this morning, someone told me about these things called HS codes, harmonic standardization codes, which are a thing to identify product. But I was also told they were used for intergalactic trade. It was like a series of 14 digits and going by twos, like the first two digits would identify where it came from, and the next two would identify, what it was made. It would go all the way down to 14. Do you remember any, or maybe this was something you might recall, but if different cargo had different types of codes to identify what the cargo actually was?
No, so we had all kinds of packaging. So we would trade from ETs a lot. What was the standard package that we got from a lot of ET races was like a box made out of like a graphite, like a plastic, like a graphite. The boxes were like that, and they would have their own reader that was something like inside the box that would read it, but we had a handheld thing that would go up. The guys, I didn't do it. I did do it, but it wasn't my job. Like I filled in and helped out. But we had cardboard boxes, we had wooden crates, we had 55-gallon drums, we had giant boxes. If it had a tipping report, if it was more than a meter, the box was more than 1 meter tall, it went to the main cargo bay in the back. The rear cargo bay was the big one. And they got the tall stuff because they had an adjustable, the floor could actually move like 3 feet down, and it had a storage space under it. So all the tall stuff went back there. I got everything that was 1 by 1 by 1 meters. But yes, oh man, you're blowing my mind with that, because we did have a numerical code that was like that, and it was on some of the what it is we had different scanning, we had different scanners for different packages, because you couldn't drop off a package with a radioactive isotope that told what it was down to Earth and expect it to, you get what I'm saying? Like we couldn't unveil technology, so we would package things that would go with the system of back to Earth, like when we dropped off cargo. So they'd get mostly cardboard boxes. Like most of the time, Earth was a cardboard box thing or a wooden crate. The bigger stuff, we got crates. But there were 4 or 5 different methods of scanning the stuff, and there were a lot of times that we got cargo from ET species that had no mark, nothing. And we had to inventory them. And what we did was we just got the weight, the height. And I remember that was a scary thing, because we're like, is somebody in there? Is a monster going to jump out? Because we don't know what's in it. And I remember that we would always joke about it, like this one's going to have a one-eyed monster. We would always talk about that. That was like a very real fear. It never happened, but we would get cargo from ET species, and the guys in command were like stealing, they were ripping them off. They were trading them some, giving them some baking soda and saying it was cocaine kind of deal. So that they were like, just hurry up and load it. We're getting out of here. So we didn't have time to really deal with that. So what we were told was when we had boxes like that, to weigh them, measure and weigh them, and then stack other stuff around them. So that if something bad was inside of it, that it had like boxes around it. And but that did happen. That was something that happened, and we had our own system of making up our own barcodes. And they had a laser, like that burned it, a laser burning thing that burned a barcode onto it as well.
Yeah, because actually,
oh man, you're screwing me up here, Chris.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have starting headaches. I'm starting to remember stuff.
Yeah, because what you're talking about too, like there's actually technology now where they can actually like burn a barcode into things, and there's another type of technology called RFID, which is basically, it's like a label, but you don't need to see the label. It could be inside the box. It's almost like when you go through the toll booths and you go through the Easy Pass, it just scans the thing. So you probably were using all those different types of technologies that are, we have them here, but.
And so there were 7 guys or so. Usually it was a standard a crew of 7 in my cargo bay. So there was another starboard cargo bay, another 7 guys. And I think there was something like 20 guys in the back. There were 30 of us altogether, right around 30 something cargo guys. But what happened was those guys that worked in the bay, I was the engineer. So I worked upstairs above the bay was where my station was. But those 7 guys, they would each get trained. So they took classes for that. So I didn't get the classes on a lot of stuff. Like they showed me how to use the scanner and how to actually do it. But I never took the actual class and I didn't know exactly what I was doing. Well, but there was a radioactive tag that because there was nothing on the outside of it, and it was a way that they could scan it and get the information of what it was, but it was a form of radiation that was supposed to be, it was supposed to be healthy, like not dangerous, but it was radioactive.
Interesting. Sean, what do you want to share?
Yeah, a bunch of stuff I'm random, but I'm going. My thing is Psionic League, so I read a bunch of stuff and have attuned awareness, so I can sense the audience that will be happening in the future, and hopefully this will help bring this out more and be a part of disclosure. I'm reading there's a certain amount of skepticism in the audience, so I'm gonna try to read their questions that their mind and their ego is having so they can have something to chew on, so that they can be more aware of this stuff. So this isn't any attack to you, because I'm very appreciative of you. I'm just going to ask this stuff for them because I feel it in the mind sphere. So I kind of also got a little bit of answer to this. Why should like for the skeptical person, why should I believe this? What does it benefit me? How does this make the world a better place? And why should I get rid of the global narrative belief, or at least free myself from that, for the one without the SSP existing versus the one where it exists? I'd put into that, it kind of makes the world better. It's kind of like you stepping in from a bubble reality to an even opener bubble of reality. There'll still be gatekeepers and stuff, of course, but there's some positive effects, such as you can avoid the negative rabbit holes of people going down the belief that, oh, we're getting invaded by aliens, oh, we're done for, it's gonna, that kind of, there's rabbit holes for that. And when people are researching, this planet is essentially and the solar system is fairly protected now, at least in different layers. We're closer to the space age, so that people can look forward to that. There's advanced technology already existing in the world that makes it a better place, as long as that gets out of the compartmentalization. So things like that, and we're also protected from meteorites and stuff.
Can I field that? I'd like to address that. So what basically what he's saying is, what difference does it make? That what you're saying, what difference does it make? And firstly, okay, so for somebody to listen to this information for the first time and not be skeptical, if everybody was not skeptical, it'd be weird. It would be weird if you weren't skeptical. So for the stuff I'm talking about is, anybody that's got a head on their shoulders, it would be strange. That being said, so I appreciate that and I understand it. And I like anytime somebody's skeptical and presents it in a mature way that doesn't attack me with like cuss words, I appreciate it, because most skeptics are just violent. That being said, it doesn't matter if you believe it or not, because it's coming to your doorstep. That's the deal. So here's the hard truth, is that they're going to disclose this stuff. They're going to give you this watered down version, and you're already paying for this. All the cargo that we took at Diego Garcia, we didn't pay a dime. You paid it. That's what matters. You paid for that. You are paying for this. All the infrastructure in the solar system is what you're paying for. And the people that are up there that have access to it are going to live 200-year lives. They already have longer lives, and they don't have cancer, and they don't lose limbs, and they don't have a lot of things. They have all the technology, all the things. They've been giving us scraps. We get the air fryer and the microwave and a VHS. They've been giving us that while they're taking time travel and life extension from us that we paid for. It's our right to have access to these things. Mankind, where we go one, we go all. That's my favorite quote from politics. So we are all participants in this, and we have been unwillingly for a long time. It's been 100 years, and these people are all the stuff that's going wrong in the world. Like there's a war in the Ukraine right now, And it's less about space, or it's less about territory and money, and more about disclosure. Who's going to be in, whose narrative is going to be. So they're going to disclose. We're going to get a disclosure. This is the generation of disclosure. It's not going to go another 10, 20 years. We're talking 5, 10 years. We're going to get life in space on our doorstep. The difference is if they disclose and tell you all the stuff that I'm telling you, or if they give you this wacky, rainbowy unicorn version of it. So it's very important for this. My information is very important to keep them honest. It's very important. There's slavery up there. If you read my book, it is not a PG. It is not a Star Trek episode. It's a horrifying account. A lot of people threw up and threw the book away because they couldn't finish it. A lot of people cannot finish the book because of the things I went through are horrifying. And they ask, the number one question I get is, where were your parents? Because they don't understand the time travel. The number 2 question is, how are you sane right now? And the thing is, because of everything that I went through was a long time ago, and I had 20 years, 30 years to unpack that and be dysfunctional and actually be a person that suffered greatly from it. And so now I'm later on in my life, and it's been a long time. It's been 40 years. So it's very relevant to you. You should study it. You should go and keep me honest. Don't believe everything I say. Go look, cross-examine me. I'm telling you, I would never speak publicly about this, and I would never stand in front of an audience or in front of a camera and speak about this stuff to make myself look stupid if I wasn't sure of it. And I'm sure of it. And there are many things, like my memories of places I went that I lived are freakishly accurate. I have to trust the space memories too.
A good point. And
Great.
yeah, going into the memory thing, and or to answer these questions that the audience would have, how would you describe in vocabulary how you get memories coming back, like recall versus visions versus dreams, and like the reliability of all that, and like what you give an advice to somebody going through similar?
It's a great question. I mean, if you think about this, like I remembered a place in Seattle. Like I woke up with these memories. I got my breakthrough moment happened. I got all these memories back. I remember living in space, flying, working on a UFO. I remember being in California, being in the trauma-based mind control. All of it came. I started writing it down in a timeline form. And because I wanted to email a researcher, because I knew I wasn't crazy, and I knew I didn't want to take it to the grave with me. It was just too much. And I got the memories back. And when I found the house, I went on Google, when I found physical evidence, and I went, oh my God, that's exactly how I remember it. That's when I knew that it was a memory, because it was somewhere that I've never been. I've never seen it on TV, someplace in the world that, we all have many places that we're unaware of. It was a place that I was unaware of, that all of a sudden I woke up and I had memories of living there for 2 years. I had intimate memory, a great deal of memory, not just a fuzzy, not just a quick dream of, And then I found the place, and then I went there in 2016. I went to the doorstep of the home. I went in the neighborhood. I knew the whole island. I knew the whole area. So that was different. That's what really gave me the confidence to speak about it. I would say this to people that are not sure, because you don't want to believe it. That's the other thing, is like, I would love it to be proven away, and I just go back to my life, which isn't bad. But in a dream, you don't have how you got there. You dream that you're walking on the beach. You don't remember the bus ride to the beach, or the car ride, or getting up and going to the shower. In a dream, you just appeared on the beach. In a memory, if you go looking, if you use the technique like I talked about, you think about it and just keep dwelling on it every day, like, how did I get there? There's more. If you have a dream, most people that uncover these memories only have a snippet. It's a fragment. So they're in a room, they're in a chair, and they see a gray, and that's it. And I say, well, what's the floor look like? And they go and stop and think about it. And what happens is, when you start to unpack, what color was the floor? Where was the light switch? What kind of light was it? Where was the door handle? What was it? A shiny door handle? Little things like that. When you go and pry those out, dreams don't have those. Memories do. You can get those. You can get more details out of your memories. If it's a fragmented, suppressed memory, you can work on it. Take your time. It's a lifelong thing. Take your time over time. Think about it. Just 30 seconds a day, every day, a minute a day, every day. Just dwell on it, and let your subconscious give you the memory. You dig it up. Let your subconscious give you the name of the song by not thinking about it. So every day, just what color was the floor? What color was, Oh, well, it'll come to me. And the next day, if nothing happens, do it. What color was the floor? Sooner or later, you get more. It happens. It's a keystone memory. So it's very important. And I wish I could say it's not a common phenomenon, but there's literally thousands and thousands of people that are like this right now, that have fragmented memory. Not enough to go talk about and do an interview on your awesome show, but they still have the memories nonetheless. They're just as important.
Yeah, I think everyone, including myself, everyone that's listening to this is just totally, they're starting to connect dots. They're starting to like expand their consciousness to like another level that's been hidden from us for so long. And like you said, our tax dollars have been spent on these things that we don't have any idea about. So isn't it our right to understand and learn these things? For sure.
Yeah, it's what we hired these guys for originally, and they got access and they went, whoa, we don't need you anymore. And they've moved on. And so we hired people to do a job for us, and they decided the job is better than living amongst us, and that's kind of a weak argument. The reality is that we're all in this together, and that like the secrecy is only to victimize us. There's no other reason to keep it all secret. When you look at ET contact, I say this a lot too. There is no benevolent ET contact. Not one. Because any benevolent ET contact would make an appointment and say, look, we're going to come down and we'd like you to come on our ship Thursday at noon. That's what a benevolent contact would look like.
Ooh, that makes sense.
ET contact shows up in your bedroom and takes your kid in the middle of the night. That's our highest crime. All of it. So there is no benevolent contact, none of it. So benevolent contact is sending us a message and knocking at the front door and saying, we'd like you to participate. We'd like to take you with us tomorrow at noon. Is that okay? That would be benevolence.
I agree.
The rest of it is all bullshit. Everything after that's just BS.
Yeah, they'd be like making excuses and shit to like try to own a person. If it's a positive ETA race, they or a light being, they don't do anything against your free will. They get your consent. They'll form you. There will probably be an altar or something towards that, and they'll be a part of a mission. They'll have a relation with you, like soul family or a DNA relation, if they usually contact you if it's positive. But yeah, if it's abduction, they're not asking. They're stealing your DNA or experimenting with you. They'll flower it up and put screen.
And then, oh, by the way, can we have some consent? Can we have your consent? Oh, by the way, now that we got you here, can we have your consent?
Exactly. We won't let you go unless you sign this.
Yes. So as we're talking, I'm sure a lot of people that are watching have questions, and I would invite anyone to put their questions in the comment section below, because we would definitely like to have Tony on again, and maybe we could address some of those questions. Because even myself, I have more questions, but I know that we're starting to run low on time at the moment. But this interview has been amazing, Tony. Thank you so much. Is there anything in conclusion you'd like to say?
Thanks for having me, you guys. Sean, I love you, man. You've been great to me all along. Chris, it's been great to meet you. If you have questions, hopefully my book is a linear account. People always say you're selling the book to sell. You're just trying to sell books. I'm also trying to not get asked the same questions over and over. So on top of selling books, it's great. You know what I mean? Like, who wouldn't? But I'm working on another one that's going to answer some of the spiritual side questions, and I'm hoping to get that out in a few months. And I'm working alongside as an advisor with some guys that are making a sci-fi series based on my recollection of the SSP, based on the SSP.
Cool.
So there's a lot of things in the works, and you can check everything out on TonyRodrigues.com. And you can email me there directly if you have any questions or want to talk. And I'm on Facebook too, but Facebook is Facebook. It's not for everybody. It's not what it used to be.
Do you mind if I ask a few more questions, like for the wrapping up? Can you tell us a little bit more about you speaking at this conference, and like what will be entail, and how people can sign up and come on down to Florida?
The Galactic Spiritual Informers Conference. You can Google that, Orlando. And I am stoked. Danny, I met her and Alex Collier in was it 2021 or 2020, before the pandemic, I think, when all the fires were in California. So I went out to Mount Shasta and I met them. She asked me to be a speaker there when it was still on the drawing board. So I got in, and then all these other great speakers. Elena Danon's going to be there for the first time speaking publicly, I think for the first time on the Galactic Federation. Dr. Sala will be there, who is very selective in where he goes. So it's an honor to have those people there. Laura Eisenhower will be there. Alex Collier, it's going to be his final live appearance. He's going to quit doing live appearances after this will be his final one. Chris O'Connor, who's new to the scene, who has the deemsdevice.org, I believe, or deemsdevice.com, who has a great amount of information. He didn't get tortured like I did. He was up there working a regular, he had an identity. So his information is amazing. I'm trying to think of a few other people that are going to be there, but it's a great ticket, and it's in Orlando. And I heard that the conference center didn't get any damage from the hurricane whatsoever. That was high and dry. And so they went and looked the next day, but the areas around it got flooded. So the conference center is still on. It's still going on in Orlando, the 21st, 2nd, 3rd, I believe, of October. And it's the hottest show in town right now, as far as in ufology. It's the big one right now. So I am just honored to be there. I'm going to go and present kind of like, I expect most people to know my story from other speaking engagements and, been on the show. So I'm going to present kind of like intergalactic economy and talk about the trading and slavery and what slavery was like. So I'm just going to present on that. I think there's a panel, and I think I'm talking on Saturday is the day that I'm there. So I'm just honored. I'm stoked to be there. Like, to be a fly on the wall at that conference I'd be just as happy, but it's an honor to be speaking there and getting out the word. The thing is, everybody goes, so, I'm surprised, along the line of that question earlier is, what do we do about it? What do we do about this? And we're not going to fight back like with guns or anything. So right now we're up against our own ignorance. Most of the people are unaware that these technologies exist, that these programs exist, and that people are working as much, that they're as big as they are. So we're up against our own ignorance in that. So that's where the fight is right now. The fight of disclosure is about disclosing and making the secret space program, making the 20 and back, the career return, or whatever you want to call it, a household name, so that people aren't taken back when they first hear about it. We got to get rid of that. It's got to get to the masses. We've only had a small audience. So that's where we're at. I'm just talking about it. And that's why I'm pushing my book, because people that don't understand it can read the book and really get their head around what happened to me and what happens to other people. So that's why, that's the biggest thing. It's just, we just got to make the information not get swept under the rug, which is they'd love to do it. They would love to.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for speaking your story. And as I also know and have experienced a lot of the stuff that I've experienced, I don't want to talk about. I don't want to bring it out. There's almost no reason for me to. There's no benefit, and other than people being skeptical about it and then shunning me and then getting more shadow banned and censored as I already am. Can you, for also the skeptical people that have these thoughts coming in their mind that the ego boundaries want to compress them in to keep them in the global narrative that is programmed by the TV and the environment and the parasitic beings on the planet, how has this the people that would say oh, you're shilling this, you're making up story because it benefits you somehow, blah blah blah, monetary, how this benefits you, how it doesn't benefit you, that you've been saying this story for a while. What is your experience in that?
So I never expected to tell this. I never expected to still be talking about it. I thought I'd do an interview and that was it. So I didn't expect that. I still am. I've met a lot of great people. The number one, first and foremost, I'm known and I know people that are also in the ufology. So that's, you know what I mean? I got into a community that I was not in before, and I'm known, and I made great friends. I've met amazing friends. That's all. And that's been the greatest benefit. The book has been a shot in the arm, but it's not going to retire me. The book doesn't make that kind of money. It's just a little bit of money. And for the most part, the disadvantages outweighed the advantages by far. I've been shunned by family members, school friends, high school friends, close family members, the in-laws, my children. So the kids that bully my children are aware, and it's all through their school. My children get confronted with my information in high school. on and on and on. There are a lot of things that, like, I've taken my lumps. There's an Tony Rodrigues YouTube channel. There's a lot of hate. I get it from people, from flat earthers. I had people that said, "Oh, you thought you were a slave," and I've had people that were mad at me for that. I get it all the time. A lot of the talks that I've done, I paid for out of my pocket to travel to rent a car, to get a hotel room, and got no pay, and got on stage and told my story, and half the crowd didn't care to have me there. And I've done that several times. And so it's paid out of pocket. I've given every Saturday for the last 6 years to this, and many weekdays to do these interviews. And I've alienated some very, very close loved ones because they can't get their head around it. And, your hometown is the last place you're going to be accepted when you step on stage. It's just true. And so personally, I've paid a very dear, huge cost for this, man, and I believe in it, though. That's the thing, is I don't want to take this to the grave. I'm going to die, and this story is going to go with me. And if it goes unheard, it's going to just perpetuate. The first necessary step to undoing this, from little kids being taken and being slaves, literally slaves. I was 10 years old. The first step to undoing this is making sure that people know it exists. And that's where I'm at right now. That's really all I got. And so that's where I believe in that. I believe in what I'm doing. I really do. But I've sure taken my lumps, and this isn't some kind of get rich quick scheme, because I'm definitely not rich. I'm a normal guy. I'm a wood floor refinisher, and I work a 50-hour week every week. And that's how I pay the bills. It's not because I'm doing this. My Patreon channel and the memory stuff, the memory course and the consultations, it's all chump change, and it barely pays for the internet, and it does not pay for the travel. So that's where I'm at that's what I would say to anybody like that. And if you think you're going to make up a story and fall in my shoes and get rich, you might want to try something else. Maybe go into poetry or songwriting. I don't know what to tell you.
It's a little bit better, right? Yeah,
We appreciate you.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I also, personally, I believe your types of experiences, because I've been through similar, and in my experience, it's something you don't want to be real. Like, I wouldn't want to be a slave, and I'm sure you don't. And the trauma is mind-numbing, and it takes up a large amount of my time dealing with post distress, traumatic post-distress disorder, and from something that you shouldn't have experienced in this timeline is painful, emotional, annoying. It can be disruptive. It takes a lot away from this experience, until we learn the tools to overcome it, which will push us to be stronger, fortunately. But yeah, nobody wants this trauma and this negative stuff and to be enslaved. So it gives more validity to you, because you're not like shining a story of, oh, I had all this amazing experience and flew through space, and it's like my experiences that kept bleeding over. A lot of the first ones were negative, and I kind of wanted it to not be true, and I put it into box and ignored it, but it keeps exploding outward and affecting my life, and like, oh, wow, this is real, and there's tangible evidence to it, and to where it disrupts my life so much. I can't ignore it anymore. And then there's a story that just keeps unfolding with it, and it's amazing, and it like pokes holes in the fake reality of that's given to us. We have to search for the real reality. It doesn't get presented to us.
Most people that got traumatized. The soldiers saw brutal combat. They saw traumatic things. The people that were workers were treated bad. When people come forward with stories like, yeah, I was on the moon, and they put me in charge, and then I went to Saturn, and I was in charge there, and we had a war, and I was decorated. I was a general. And then they put me back here and delete my memory. I'm thinking to myself, that's the biggest red flag, because everybody came back with something. Most people did not want to remember when they were leaving up there. The general feeling for a lot of people that were up there was, when I go back, when they delete my memory, I want it to stay deleted. I don't want to remember. And maybe that's why it's so effective, because there's trauma involved. They don't treat us as good as you think they do just because they have spaceships. They're not morally bound like that. There's not a lot of human rights like we would think there are down here. And there's a great deal of trauma, and pretty much everybody I've ever talked to had a great deal of trauma from it. There's suffering. And so it's not a glamorous thing. That's what I mean. Like, we have to get a disclosure. We have to make it glamorous. We got to get the public. We have people, we need to disclose, and we need to have a normal human existence up there versus a military one that's going through these terrible things. So,
yeah,
I mean, you understand what I mean.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm always skeptical of people that make it sound like it was a great time.
Yeah, me too. And then one of my last questions, and if you got anything, Chris, feel free. Since I last talked to you, I asked a similar question. And how should we, like, with all the things going on in history, and even though the U.S. is like doing this culture war to pit races against each other for the ancestral past history, there's actually more slavery going on now today than there used to be, based on the populations and all these countries that get away with it, that aren't talked about because it's swept under the rug, and like also in underground and bases and these other species and off-world. How since I last talked to you, have you culminated any more knowledge on the solutions towards the goal to free yourself from all slavery, or what would need to happen, kind of thing?
There just has to be open information. That's it. The secrecy is slavery, period. The secrecy is what's the problem. The compartmentalization, it enables it. Their slaves exist. In the United States, there's something like 30,000 people living in slavery right now. Literally. I've been researching for my presentation in Orlando. 30,000 people in the United States, because nobody knows about it. It's the secrecy. So that's the very first thing that we've got to address, the compartmentalization and the black secrecy that is beyond our government. We have to fix that. We just have to. But guys, I'm out of time. I have a lot of stuff pressing right now, and I would love to come back. I feel like we just scratched the surface.
Yeah, same here. And by the way, Sean and myself we're gonna take our UFO down to Orlando, and we're gonna see you at the show. So it'll be great to meet you in person. And some of the people that watch our show, we're renting a little conference room the Saturday evening. So some people that are watching the show will actually be able to meet us as well, doing a meet and greet and question and answer session. So Tony,
we'll hang out with Tony, and come hang out with us too. So,
yeah,
awesome.
And also Chad from Open Your Realities, he'll be there as well. So everyone, thank you for tuning in and listening. Tony, thank you so much for your wealth of information. Sean, as always, thank you for all of your insights.
You, Chris.
And until next time on the next Symphony of Realities podcast. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See ya.